no matter, I married a stunning woman. She's great. She's one of those that I always wanted to chase, and I found her. To your inner child is not enough.
Yeah. Eddie, how are you, my friend?
Oh, and I'm well, my friend. How have you been?
I'm doing well, and I'm about to do even better, I think, as we dive into the why question.
Oh,
And
don't throw any pressure on me.
yeah, yeah, there we go. I know. So the why question, this is such a hot topic, if you will, in the sex and porn addiction space. I mean, this is, I remember early on in my addiction, that was, I almost felt pressure to discover my why. And then, of course, for those who are listening who are married, your partner is probably listening to podcasts, reading books, and those are all telling her the same thing. Hey, does your husband or fiance or boyfriend, do they know why they do this? Do they know why this started? I gotta say though, Eddie, I don't necessarily disagree with the importance, but man, that question is not an easy one. I think the way that it is sold very, very often on the podcast, in the books, is, oh yeah, just figure out your why. Buy this workbook and fill out this workbook, and then you'll know your why. Eddie, I probably did 3 or 4 intensives. A new number of virtual kind of workshops. And then I've seen multiple CSATs of over all those years. And I will tell you right now, I don't know if I tapped into my why for probably at least a year, if not a year and a half. It's one of those things that I feel like is very, very elusive for addicts. And I think, maybe I'm alone in this, but it can be a bit frustrating when there's all this pressure to find your why, because in the day to day, it's not that black and white. It's like, you'll act out and you'll be happy. You'll act out when you're sad. You'll act out when you have a great financial month. You'll act out when you have bad financial month. You'll act out sometimes when you travel. You won't act out sometimes when you travel. I mean, how does one find their why if especially for entrepreneurs and high achievers, a lot of their lives are unpredictable and they like it that way. But man, how do we find our why when the addiction appears to be all over the place?
That's a big question that we're going to have to break up into little pieces along the way to answer it. And yes, you're right. There are so many people who are so frustrated by the why question. My why question isn't why are you doing that? My question is why do you think, feel, and do what you do? See, I'm going deeper. And part of my whole, what people know me by, I'm the inner child guy. And that's what the original book, Going Deeper, How the Inner Child Impacts Your Sexual Addiction. And the reason for it, Roland, is the idea that whether we know it or not, in 99.9% of the cases, the guys do not know it, we are reactive to events that happen today, whether positive or negative, that correlate with something from our past.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We are still haunted by a lot of childhood wounds that we suppressed them a long time ago or repressed them. But yet they still come out on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how drained you are mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, it's going to determine how well you can battle what you're dealing with at the moment. Okay? Because that inner child that you have is a really tough dude. All right? And he's coming back, and what he's saying to you, something happened today, the boss reams you out for whatever reason, and all of a sudden, kid reaching into a storage unit, and he pulls out dad, because dad was always super critical, and he's like, we felt this before, we felt this before. And so therefore your anxiety, whatever it was from your boss, let's say on a scale of 0 to 10, it's like a 5. Well, the fact that the kid is dragging this in, unbeknownst to you, is now having your anxiety go from a 5 to an 8 to a 9 to a 10. People who deal with addiction, and this is universal, I've seen it all because I don't deal, right now, I deal exclusively with people who deal with behavioral addictions. I used to deal with people who did substance abuse, drugs. I have yet to meet a single one who can sit with emotional discomfort.
Mhm.
You can't. You don't know how to. Nobody ever showed us. So therefore, that anxiety continues to grow in you, continues to increase. You're not even fully aware of that anxiety because we're not really good at understanding our bodies and our minds and our soul and what are they saying to us. Well, guess what? We can't deal with that. So it's like, you know what? What we learned when we were very young. How am I going to deal with this? I won't think about it.
Mhm.
How do you not think about it? I distract myself.
Mhm.
Again, too much television, too much food, too much sugar, too much fantasy. Now we change out the behavior and we run to them.
Mhm.
Running to that behavior enough becomes addictive.
Well, and to your point, I think the way you kind of defined it was good. Is, when we're talking about childhood trauma or even inner child work, I know a lot of the men in my group struggle with that word. They just, a lot of them are like, what's the point of that? And every time I've done it, with my CSAT, it just kind of seems to be this cyclical thing of, oh, that's because of this. And it's like, okay, cool. Thank you for that piece of information. And what do I do with it? And so
What
it's kind of a
you have,
dirty word.
right, right, right. But see, that's the problem. After you identify, and for me, there are numerous emotional triggers that we all have. Okay, most men have anywhere between 4 and 8. All right. Again, we don't know this. But once we identify them, then right to the point, okay, here you are, we see that. Well, okay, now you know your triggers. All right, good. No, no, it's like, what do I do now when I get triggered?
Mhm.
Okay. And that's when I move them to the process, okay, the inner child process in the model. What do I do with these? Well, the basic part of it is understanding what I feel, okay, those emotional triggers, and what is real are usually two very different things. We run, whether we want to believe it or not, when it comes to our acting out, it is based on raw emotions. That's it. That's what got us to run. Why? Because I can't sit with this emotional distress. I don't know how to do it. So I just escape. Now, what I have them do is they sit and they take time. Okay, these are the emotions I'm feeling. Write them all down. And when we do, we take time. You know what? We're slowing everything down. That's what we're trying to do. First and foremost, slow everything down. And so what I do is I take that list of emotions and I move it over to rational thinking. Oh, wait a second. We've never done that before. Okay. Well, what do I do here? Anything that's an assumption gets thrown out. Anything that could be a lie gets thrown out. Anything that's fear based gets thrown out. And what you're left with is something that's very manageable. And this now, as you're doing this, as you're removing these things, your anxiety is coming back down.
But I gotta say, I think you're still giving these guys too much credit. I think, I know, again, maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but I think the story coming from the high performer, high achiever, entrepreneur, the story in my head that I like is that I don't have problems. And so when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, list out your emotions," so let's say you get caught. Your wife catches you. Your behavior's been exposed. Now I'm going to, let's say it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks after I've gotten caught, and my therapist is asking me, "Hey, let's list out some of these emotions." Again, I think the first thing that pops in my head is what emotions. The only emotion I have right now is that is because my wife caught me. but prior to that, my life was fantastic. So what would you say to somebody like that?
Well, first and foremost, that doesn't just go to your audience of the high achievers. That's across the board with all men who struggle with addiction. All right. The idea that, hey, I'm cool, I'm good, I have no issues. You know what? It's erroneous. It's false. They are there. And you know what? If you have no issues, why are you relapsing? Why are you still struggling? If everything's good, you shouldn't be having any problems. But you are. You are having problems. And the reason you're having problems is because the issues you need to look for, again, are suppressed. They're underneath the surface. They're there. You just refuse to look at them.
Mhm.
And so therefore, and I am a nonsense kind of guy. Okay. When I deal with my clients, I am not coddling them. I am not babying them. I am saying, you know what? You have to have the stone to go and look underneath the surface. You have to pull back the curtain and see what's there,
Mhm.
because we've done a great job of hiding things from ourselves. And your success plays into that, helping you to hide. You can hide behind that because there's so much satisfaction that you get from it. There's so much joy, which rightfully so. That's wonderful. You should have it. But do not be deceived by the fact that because I have success, that I do not have other issues that are lying underneath the surface that are causing me to act out in destructive ways.
If you're, you said, you bring up a good point, because I think when people hear the term inner child, especially men who um, are very practical, a lot of the men in my group, they're as high achievers, high performers, they're very linear. They're very, they brain things. They like to think. There's lots of logic involved. And so when you hear the concept inner child, a lot of them are like, oh gosh, what am I, why am I, what's the point of this? And, I'm a full grown man. Why am I going, what does this little 4-year-old version of me have anything to do with it? But I think you brought up a really good point is, I like Pia Melody's kind of take on the, wounded child, adapted child, and functional adult kind of philosophy, because I think if you think of those almost like, the movie, Inception or The Matrix, if you can imagine you're going into a dream, and then you're going into a dream from that dream. And then, you become a functional adult. You are now 3 dreams deep. And so, yes, you could say, well, look at how great things have turned out. Remember how they were here. But again, I think to your point, you bring up a really great point, is you did this because of the thing that you needed to change. Okay. I'm not fulfilled the way that I am. I'm not as successful as I want to be. My current resources and day is not pleasurable enough for me. I'm selling myself short. Right. I'm not achieving at the level that I know I'm capable of. Right. So then they become this. But I think the point is, and I think you said it really nicely, is those are talking about these top 2 layers, the adaptation to the person who wasn't enough. But then the question is, what were you before that layer? And then is there one even deeper than that? And so I think, when someone says, oh, I'm good, it's like, in what realm of existence are you good? And what
That is
got you there?
that's a wonderful way of putting it, Roland. I don't think I could have even communicated it any better. Yes, we could feel I feel well in this realm that we're in right now, with you and I. Okay, I feel great. I am not. Okay, I am not, because I know right now I'm dealing with a lot of headaches. I've been brain fog. There's other stuff that's going on. But you know what? I'm pushing that all aside right now to be able to deal with this and do what I need to do. And I can do that. At some point, if I don't go back and look at it, it's going to catch up with me.
Mhm.
And when it catches up with me, no, I'm not going to be going out and sexually acting out. But you know what? I might get a little, you know, short with my wife when I go to talk to her. Okay. Somebody calls and say, hey, I need to talk to you. I may blow them off. It's going to come out sooner or later, one way or another. So therefore, again, if we're really successful as men, one of the things that we're very successful with is to understand what is going on with me mentally, emotionally, and in my soul
Mhm.
every day throughout the day. Because I don't care if you're successful or not, right? We make mistakes. And sometimes we make mistakes that aren't really, they don't need to be made. Why do they happen? Because we got lax. Because we didn't do the self care that's needed. And oh, I went to the gym and I brushed my teeth and I ate well. It's like that's sorry, that's not enough of the self care. It's about self reflection. It's about sitting still. How am I doing mentally? Am I sharp? Am I focused? Do I have a lot of racing thoughts? How am I doing emotionally? Have my mood shifted at all in the last hour or two along the way? What is my soul telling me? What are the emotions that I might be feeling or not feeling that I should perhaps be feeling?
Mhm.
These are all critical things. We need to be, you have to treat the entire body in order to get rid of the bad behavior. Because if you're looking at just getting rid of the bad behavior and you're not transforming your heart, your mind, and your soul, you will continue to struggle.
Well, I think you said the great point, which is, the way I always word it is, you're always justified in your actions. Every single person who does it, you're justified in it. So to regret it and have all this shit. It's you got to go back to that moment. You justified it. It was a justifiable decision. It made sense in that time. Now, I think to help someone kind of understand why this inner child work is a thing that's really popular amongst addicts. If we just trace it back, I'll give you a really miniature example here that kind of just paints this. So the 4-year-old, he, let's say, in class, he's a bit shy. Okay. And because of this, he misses a few opportunities to kind of get into the in crowd, even though the irony is he has the same interests as them. But, he didn't have the guts to walk over and say, hey, do you want to be my friend? Which is a vulnerable thing because the person could say no. Right. So you're this 4-year-old, you don't do that. You are now not in the in crowd. And you tell yourself some sort of story around this. And the story could be, they don't want me, or the story could be, I'm such a coward. Why didn't I, now they're group of 5, the teacher asked you to get into groups of 5. They already found their group of 5. And
Right.
now, because I hesitated, I am now in a different group. And you could tell yourself a story. So then we fast forward, it happens again. But when it happens again, let's say you're 10 years old. And in this particular case, you were trying to ask a girl to be your something, some sort of dance, some sort of opportunity to get this girl to, again, you chicken out. And not only that, but she chooses one of the guys who happened to be in that group of 5 years ago. And then you tell yourself another story. And usually around 10, this story could get a little bit more significant. It could be, oh my gosh, no one really likes me. Man, I'm just this shy thing's just not working out for me. I need to find a way to not be shy anymore. So we fast forward.
Well,
And
I'm different. I'm different than the other guys.
exactly right. There's something right. In a one down.
I don't
Exactly is
interrupt.
what they call it. Right. A one down position. Right. And then one more thing happens in, let's call it 16, 17 years old. You don't get chosen. She chooses someone else. And now you're closer to adulthood. You draw some sort of conclusion like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to compromise on what women I get. I'm going to have to start kind of going after women that I don't really want because the ones that I want don't want me. I might be alone forever. I might, all these fantastic sexual experiences that everybody's talking about, I might not get those. Now imagine when someone draws that conclusion, how scary that might be. There's all these things that you're not going to experience. You're going to die alone. You're going to have to sell out and compromise in your relationship. So imagine when that guy turns 25, what kind of things is he doing? And I go through that example because this was not necessarily exact same stories, but these was a retracing of things that I did. And in my addiction, I'll tell you, when I became so when I was 27, I was doing really well for myself. I had 2 business locations. I was making what I thought was a ton of money back then. It wasn't as much money as I thought, but I thought it was a ton then. And I'll tell you what was the goal? The goal was to become the guy who could get those girls. And you know what's really sad is I got married, fast forward another 7 years later after that, I got married to the, love of my life. And that narrative didn't stop, Eddie, because in my head, yes, I loved her. Yes, that was great. But again, I had gotten into this, I was convinced that the women who I wanted didn't like me. And I know it sounds insane because I married one, and you would think that it would stop, but it didn't, because every day was, oh, I wonder if they like me. I wonder if they still like, oh, am I getting too old? Oh, let me see if I can show them how much money I have now. That game just doesn't go away. It kind of lives in there. And, an unfavorable situation kind of presents itself. You act on something like that. And to your point, if your brain likes that, it could do it again and again. It usually starts out as an emotional affair. That's usually kind of how it starts out for some people who haven't broken the flesh line yet. But emotional affairs, from what I've heard from a lot of my men, are more addicting than physical affairs. Or the amount of dopamine they're getting for a 12-hour period of time is high, right?
But even more so than the dopamine, the amount of oxytocin that they get, which again, that feel good.
Yes, euphoria.
I call it the goo goo gaga.
Yeah.
But your point, so therefore, right? No matter, I married a stunning woman. She's great. She's one of those that I always wanted to chase, and I found her. To your inner child, it's not enough.
Yeah,
it's not enough. I need, but what, you know what? She may not be here at some point. She may leave us. She may find somebody better, because there are much better guys out there than we are. Okay, he has all of these false ideas about it because he's scared. He's scared. So therefore, what do? Oh, you're interested? Oh yeah, and you're stunning. Before you know it, that's where you are. But yet, people, when they find out, they're like, "What are you, crazy?
Yes.
Look what you were giving up." But the inner child, and remember, the inner child is us. It is me. My inner child is me, but he is the scared me who lived through those scenarios you just outlined. Okay, those scenarios, they don't go away unless they're processed. So therefore, they are going to still haunt you today if you do not identify what those are, and then be learning how to move away from what I feel to what is real. Okay, oh, she's interested in me. She likes me. She's like hot. Wow, okay, what am I feeling? Well, I'm feeling affirmed. I'm feeling that I'm noticed. I'm feeling that I am bigger than. Okay, all of these things. What's reality? Reality is I already have a woman who thinks of me like that, who I really do care about, and the last thing I really want to do in the world is to hurt her. Okay, that's reality. We don't slow down enough to get to that point to start looking at things. We just, as I said, we run on the raw emotions.
And I hope everybody listened to that, because I think that example that you just gave, at least with a lot of the guys in my groups, that really resonates. Because I think at the gym, when the whole exchange is happening, there's the she's giving you that look, you're giving her that look. In that moment, you're not, to your point, who's thinking? Is it the 15-year-old who was going to be a somebody one day and be wanted? Or is it the guy who made the decision of a lifetime to be with the most intelligent, giving woman that he's ever met? And that's, and I think for those who are so resistant to like inner child work, that right there, Eddie, was a perfect example, because it's like, tell me right now who was thinking, because I think if they really were honest with themselves, it's not the person who's building a life that they are proud of. In that moment, it is a very, it is a version of themselves from back ago. And I think I wanted to say one more thing too, is, again, with inner child work, when people hear this word, there was once a moment in time where you didn't have anything wrong with how you thought. There was a moment when you came into this world, you only thought and sought out the truth. You felt that that was it. So when people are seeing this inner child thing and they're like, why would I go back here? You said something really nice, Eddie. You are that inner child. And we're not talking about your 16-year-old self, your 11-year-old self. Those are kind of cool to get back. But I mean, ultimately, the goal, and this is something that I'm still actively working on with, I have a somatic experiencing therapist that I do a lot of this work with. I'm trying to get back to a point, man, can I get back to the version of me that didn't learn any of this, that hadn't eaten from the tree of knowledge and learned all this nonsense that polluted what I was supposed to do. And I think I'm reiterating this, Eddie, because I know high achievers, high performers, people who are goal oriented, who just feel inside called to make an impact, to do something great while they're here. That calling was implanted in you as that person who entered the world, and it's been corrupted. And so if you are like, oh, I don't want to do inner child work, I would ask you to reconsider, because I think, I was holding my sister's baby a couple of weeks ago. She just had a brand new baby, and I was so envious of this little guy. He's about 3 months old. And I was like, man, I wish I knew what he now knows. And it's going to be sad, because he's going to soon want to become a somebody, just like all young men. And the sad part is he's more of a somebody now than he will be 20 years later. And I think that I hope everyone understands what I'm saying is, if you don't want to do this work, I would encourage you to reframe how you're looking at it, because what you're trying to tap into was someone who didn't learn about Ferraris, who didn't learn about the 401k, who wasn't distracted by man-made creations, who actually owns his unique abilities and his calling, and that's the driving force. And people who I know who have a good relationship with that piece of them aren't addicts.
Yeah, you're right. That's exactly right. What happens is we get tarnished. We believe things about ourselves based on circumstances that we don't have the mental capacity to really comprehend what is going on here. There's nobody there showing us how to deal with that pain. Therefore, we just make our own truth out of it. And in many cases, again, it is wrong what we're thinking. I'm not as good as they are. I don't measure up with them. No, that's not what it comes down to. So if there would have been an adult there who just said, look, you know what? It comes down to preferences.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people, they pick and choose. You're going to have preferences also. But it also comes down to, are you going to take a chance?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to take a risk and try to see if you can belong there or not? If you're not going to take it, then you know what? They're just going to think, oh, he doesn't want to be part of us. Okay. Oh, wait a second. What do you mean that? No, I don't. I want to be there, but they're not going to take it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, see, but we are more emotionally based in our thinking than we are cognitive. All right. When we're young like that. Two, we don't have all the worldly experiences that we have today that we can sort through all of these and come to a rational decision. So instead, I'm stuck with this pain. And like I said, I can't sit with this pain. If I sit with this pain too much, it'll lead a child to wind up becoming
Mm-hmm.
depressed. So I'm not going to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So distract yourself.
Oh, I think the third that I would say, what I consider the most important, Eddie, and I'd be curious your thoughts on this, is at least in my work, the thing that finally makes all the difference is understanding that there is a difference between. There are kind of two different realities, unfortunately. It'd be so nice if there was just one, but kind of the way that the world's become, there's at least two. For a lot of high achievers, high performers, there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But what I mean is, there's one that little person who entered the world, there's that one that he was really excited to play, which is full of fulfillment, satisfaction, connection, using his unique abilities to collaborate with another human who has other unique abilities, and seeing what the combination of these two humans and our unique abilities could make. It's very curious, it's open, it's non-judgmental, because he just entered the world 2 days ago. He doesn't know what a rich person is, a poor person is. That will be taught to him later. And so I think the thing that really, to me, is the aha moment for a lot of the guys in our group is when they can see the split, that yes, crushing it in the materialistic, capitalistic, for lack of a better word, man-made definitions of, oh, this is enough money, this is not enough money, this is attractive enough, this isn't, all of these things are taught to you. People tell you what's attractive and what's not. People tell you how much money you need and how much you don't, or what neighborhood you need to live in. This kid who got born didn't know those things, and so they were learned. And then if you put yourself on this hierarchy, that's where, for a lot of the guys who say, oh, I'm not dysregulated. Imagine, though, if there is a hierarchy of humans and you're anything less but the top. Imagine what that feels like. And I would say high performers, that's the stress that you have accepted as truth. So when a therapist asks you, hey, are you experiencing stress, anxiety, pressure? Do you feel inadequate? Their answer is no, because on that hierarchy, it's like, I have no option but to spend the rest of my life trying to get here. So I'm not going to talk about this because this is a given. It's like your need for drinking water. It's just, why would I talk about it? It's a given. I will not stop until I am this guy and there's no one above me. And I think until you realize that is a choice, and that was not part of your DNA. And I think this is unfortunate truth that a lot of people realize once they get the money is when you get there, which is impossible to get to, but when you get close, you start to realize, whoa, what's going on? I was way happier when I was broke. Why, it seems to almost be the satisfaction, fulfillment. It's almost inversely related. But I think, to me, I'd love for you to speak on it, but it's that when you realize that the man-made way of doing things as it's been defined, that we think the world is actually has nothing to do with the world. And then there's the other one that little guy who entered the world was excited to participate in. And the sad part is, by the time he's 9, he will almost have forgotten all about that. And he will likely have bought into the man-made version. And I think that's why when people look around for examples of people who are doing what we're doing, it's going to be hard to find examples of people who have spend more time seeking truth and finding truth, because there just aren't a ton of people. It is the power of the influence of the collective consciousness, the people around us. It's very, very hard to say, you know what, I'm actually not going to value that because I think that is of no true meaning and value to my life. It's hard when you're the only one that's going to say, I'm not going to place value on that, because when you look at your peers, they all value it very, very much. And to one level further, I remember when I stopped chasing the same things that all my peers were at the conferences, they didn't like me anymore. And kind of cast me out, if you will. It was like, what do you mean you're not trying to make more and more and more? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. I mean, I've got 4 locations now. This is more than enough. I've got way more money than I ever wanted. They actually stopped liking me because it was like, what do you mean you're going to relax? So it's kind of speak to this dichotomy of the collective and our desire of humans to belong to it.
Right. So let's go
even
back.
though the suffering it comes from it, right?
So let's go back to that young child. What does that young child value or want more than anything else? Attachment. He wants to be attached. He wants parents who are going to unconditionally love and accept him. He wants friends who are going to unconditionally love and accept him. Okay, he wants to feel desired. He wants to feel affirmed. That is where his value is going to come. Unfortunately, people hurt people. Right? Circumstances hurt people. Okay, because again, you were talking before about how people can can teach you how to what to value, what not to value.
Mhm.
Circumstances can also. Okay,
Mhm.
I had a client who, when he was 9 years old, he was homeless. He was living out of a car with his mom and his sister, and they lived in a car for almost 6 months. Okay, and this kid became the idea that no, you know what? For the rest of my life, what I'm going to do, I will never be here again. And he went and chased success,
Mhm.
and he found enormous success. He did. He did wonderful. But what he left behind was what he originally
Mhm.
needed as a child, and that was building those relationships. And if you don't, once you get to that point where your bonds, your attachments are broken as a child or a teen or a young adult, you're going to go either to the idea that you're going to chase them, all right? You're going to say, I don't need them. And if I don't need them, then what am I going to do? I got to go chase something else
Mhm.
to serve as a substitute for real, healthy
Mhm.
relationships. I'll have relationships, but they will not be that deep and meaningful. Because if it was that deep and meaningful, we're not doing what we are doing now. Okay.
Mhm.
We're not acting out the way we are. We can't do it. It's not possible. It wouldn't be feasible because instead our relationships are like about this deep. They feel this deep. They feel incredible. They feel like, wow, this is amazing, but they're not. And so, therefore, oh, you're interested? You could just break off real quick and go grab it. So it comes down to, therefore, then I start chasing other things that I believe are going to fill the void that I have
Mhm.
inside. What void? I don't have a void. Well, again, I'm sorry, but you haven't done the self reflection you need to do to determine, yes, you indeed have a void, and you're trying to fill it with other things. And
Right.
again, some of
We
those things
we
aren't bad.
when we brought that up in the beginning, remember we said, "In what realm of existence are you okay?" And I think
Correct.
on the same note, now here we are later talking about these two different lives. One that this little kid was like so excited to live. He's like, man, it's going to be so great. And then, by 9, it's like, oh, never mind. I guess nobody wants that. And
Right.
then, right. But that's what we're talking about here is in what plane of existence, because over here in the, I call it the man-made version. In the man-made version, full of currency, which by the way has a serial number on it, which is only as valuable as it's valuable. In my lifetime, I'm a young guy. In my lifetime, I've seen 3 countries whose currency has become useless. And so, you think, oh, look at what I have. It's like, well, you have it until the light switch gets flipped, and then, and then, I'll never forget that clip. You probably saw it too, as a picture of somebody in Venezuela with a wheelbarrow of money from the bank and walking down the street. No one was even trying to grab it. It was just like, oh, I don't want that. It's just paper. But my point is, in what plane of existence are you thriving? Because I think it's easy in a man-made constructed one to say, well, I'm doing all of that stuff, so I should be fulfilled. But again, and I've said this on so many podcasts, but I'm going to say it again. I have not seen a single biology, psychology book or religious book. You pick whatever one you're the most into, you pick. I've not seen a single one that said dominating it at the man-made version of of doing well in life will result in any fulfillment. Not a single book or expert for that matter. When we really look at the biology around what someone is designed to do, it really has nothing to do with any of this at all. Now, I just want to say one thing there. There are people who have found a way to marry the two, which that's probably the biggest goal of my program. My program is to look at the dichotomy, and then let's try to marry as much of it as we can.
Hmm.
And then the stuff that we can't marry to your actual design, that's okay. We'll just leave that over here, kind of like brushing your teeth. Everyone's,
You
it's
can
like,
have
just is what it is.
you can have both things.
Right. Correct.
Okay. I mean, you could have the wealth, you could have the status, you could have the power, you can have all of that. But if you don't have the relationship, the solid, healthy relationship, you are always going to feel there's a void. Now, there are some people who can just do with the relationships and not seek all that, and they're cool, great, you know, but you can have both. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody
Mhm.
says you can't seek to achieve, but don't be foolish enough to think that is going to be the be all end all. It will not be. There will be great dissatisfaction
Mhm.
that is going to be lingering within you, and you're going to have to find a way to fulfill that. How am I going to overcome that dissatisfaction? And that's when you start getting too much alcohol, too much drugs, too much gambling, too much, go on and on and on and on.
The voids are filled by the things that fill the voids. And if going back to the dichotomy of this man-made life versus factual, and again, it's not just, this isn't a religious thing. There are facts and science and data to back up what humans need. And if you look at it, they're literally designed to connect. I could go on and on and on and on and on and on, probably for like a 3-hour podcast episode around all the data and science that we have that show our abilities and desire and needs to connect. There's so many things that happen biologically in the body. We're not even talking about spiritually. I'm talking about actual biology. I know you know this, but we're here equipped to connect, equipped to make an impact, equipped to communicate, equipped to show compassion, equipped to get compassion. There's so much evidence to support all of that. Maybe you and I can do another episode with all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting also when you talk about the man-made life, okay? Which again, as we said, nothing wrong going after that. Don't leave the relationship behind. But those who are just going in that direction, they're using that as a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
That is a
Well,
distraction.
here, I would rephrase it this way too. I would say they're trying to fill divinely created human voids with man-made solutions. And you cannot throw money at that hole. You can't throw anonymous sex at that hole. You can't even throw, I would even say you can't even throw your wife in that hole. I mean, there are voids that need to be filled by the thing that fills that void. And you insisting on, oh no, I'm not disconnected. I speak on stage, I do keynote speeches, and they pay me $30,000 a keynote speech. This is literally, this is an exact sentence I told my therapist because I was a keynote speaker at the time. I said, oh, no, I'm not alone. I keynote speak. People in the audience are crying. I'm so connected. Look at her. She's crying. They just paid me to come speak. Of course I'm connected. And everyone's coming up and they're taking selfies with me after my keynote. And I get on the plane, and what's my thought process? How much more superior I can be than anybody else. Again, I think high achievers particularly live in a very interesting delusion where they feel like they're connected. Oh, look at all the friends. Look at all my awards. Look at how many stages I've been invited onto. Everyone's clapping for me. I'm connected. And again, when I really am honest with what's going on in my head, it's a quest for more. It's a quest for superiority. And if you add up all of those, imagine treating your best friend that way, or your wife that way, or your son that way, or your daughter that way, constantly trying to make sure that they know how good you are and awesome you are. You soon your own kids and your wife, and nobody would like being around you because no one wants to be around somebody like that. That's how we show up, right?
But see, your mindset is what, I'm only as good as the last dance I did.
Yeah.
So now I have to dance again. I have to perform again. I have to out achieve what I did before. And so now it's all performance based.
Mm-hmm.
That is extremely unfulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely unfulfilling. You can do it. You do it for a certain while. There's some people who do it for their entire lives.
You know what I call it instead of unfulfilling? I call it dehumanizing. And I think, and here's the reason I like to use that word is when you dehumanize yourself, it opens up the door to dehumanize others. And what is probably one of the best examples of dehumanizing people? Sex and porn addiction. This fact where I'm not a human, so therefore no one must be humans. Here we are. We're not human beings. We're human doing. And so that's where the sense of futility kind of comes in. It's like, okay, well, if this is all I got and I only got 34 years, well, I'm going to spend it doing things that feel good. And again, welcome to the world of, and that's where this addiction is so interesting is Unlike substance addiction, this one can be super alluring. You can plug it into esteem, you can plug it into connection, you can plug it into status. There's so many things that you can plug sex and sex appeal into. It's a very dangerous territory. So I like to use the word dehumanization when
That's a good one. I like that.
you're turning yourself into a machine that looks better and performs better and makes a ton of money and has a ton of awesome experiences. That doesn't sound like a human to me.
No, and that's why when you look at my model that I created, what I identified were 12 inner children, and they're all based on unique pain points that I believe are suffered most often that we will look to overcompensate for or to learn to distract with. Like, for example, the unnoticed child, unaffirmed child, the need for control, stress. Those are just a handful. The enmeshed child. There are, like I said, the 12 of them that people can look at. And most guys who do the work probably identify with anywhere between 4 and
Mm-hmm.
6 of these kids. And then with each of the kids, there are what I call the core emotional pain points. Those are those triggers that are going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. Yeah, there are environmental triggers, there are visual triggers. I believe, however, that the emotional triggers are the most powerful ones that we have
Mm-hmm.
that are difficult to overcome. So if I can identify, and the triggers are more important than the kids, identify which kids are, and a lot of them, like we just talked about, are tied into gaining success.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't want to deal with the stress of wondering where money's coming. I want to make sure that I'm getting affirmation. I want people to notice me. Okay, there's many things that are here that you find a way to be able to compensate because I not those emotions aren't being fulfilled in
Mm-hmm.
relationships. I'm going to fulfill them somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing that, again, there's the void. And that's why you keep going back to it, back to it, back to it. No matter how much somebody tells you, oh, the way to stop doing this is X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, I tried X, Y, and Z and I can't stop. It's because you're trying to treat the symptom.
Mm-hmm.
The acting out is the symptom of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is what is rotting at the core that you have just elected not to touch.
Yeah, the void will only be filled by the thing that fills the void. And if you keep trying to play God, play therapist, play whatever, you don't get to decide. Biology decides. It's your job as a being here to figure out, how have I gotten this wrong? Because that's what really what it was for me. It was like, hey, therapist, I'm throwing all these things in this hole and it hasn't worked. What other things could I throw in there? And if you go in with that level of surrender, that's when things start working. Hey, Eddie, this was an awesome conversation. I knew this was going to be amazing. I have a feeling that we're going to do another one, probably all around this idea of this dichotomy and kind of what one can do to blend the two. Because I think a lot of, especially high achievers, there's a lot of things about their old life they don't want to get rid of it. And I always tell everybody, I say, you don't have to. I said 90% of it's good. It's just a few things we have to, and I'm going to say with those few things that we have to delete them. We're going to modify them and make sure that they honor the human in you and the human in others. And if we just kind of add that little tweak to some of these, it's beautiful. But Eddie, I know you've been doing a ton of awesome stuff with Seeking Integrity. So really cool, free or close to free, educational opportunities on there I have seen. How else can people get a hold of you? I'm going to grab a link from you and I'll put it in the show notes here for people so they can look into a little bit more of those 12, for people, because inner child work is so difficult. I love what you've done with putting these profiles together so people can kind of look through them and say, that resonates, that doesn't, this one resonates a ton, this one kind of resonates. That's where it gives them more resources. But what else can they do to get a hold of you and start learning from you?
Yeah, well, first let me just say this. So if people are reluctant to do the inner child work, and I could understand why. I really do. I understand. I I say this, and I am fully sincere in what I'm saying. the large majority of men who do this, and I'm talking about the large majority, become so excited with what they uncover because they're no longer in the dark. And they can actually use this to help themselves in other areas of life, how to control their anger, how to stop withdrawing. I mean, there are many things that they can utilize it for beyond just trying to get rid of that behavior. People can reach out to me if they would like. My email is innerchildmodel@gmail.com. Again, innerchildmodel at gmail. If they want to find out more about the inner child model per se, they can go to innerchild-sexaddiction.com. Again, innerchild-sexaddiction.com. There's a preview of all the different kids on there. There's some audio there. Again, go to YouTube and type in Caparucci, and you will find, I don't know how many videos that are there, talking about an array of different things, not just about the inner child, but how do I help my spouse who's really struggling? Do a lot of work there with that. So that's where they go to Amazon, type in Caparucci, they'll find my various books. A lot of resources that are out
Yeah,
there.
we'll put all the links in there. Eddie, thanks so much. This was awesome. We'll have to do this again soon.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.